Good evening from New York. I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Journeys. Thank you for tuning in this evening. Our guest this evening is a son of our soil. His name is Frank Anthony Roman. So, meet Frank Anthony Roman, a successful Guyanese American personal chef. He has traveled the Amazon jungle as a trader, eating tribal foods cooked by Guyana indigenous Indians at Lethem in the Rupununi savannas, and sitting around the bonfire in the jungles of Boavista in the state of Roraima with a group of Brazil's indigenous Indians as they cook a pot of stewed monkey. Unlike world-renowned chef Anthony Bourdain of the CNN syndicated show Parts Unknown, who travels the world eating all sorts of exotic foods, Frank, who has eaten all sorts of wild meat, could not bring himself to eat the stewed monkey. Frank has come a mighty long way from his adventures in South America and the Caribbean to the sophistry of North America's second largest city, Los Angeles, California, where his culinary skills satisfy the gastronomical delights of various celebrities. I can go on and on with Frank's bio, but I'm going to bring on this handsome gentleman I've come to know as Frank Roman. Frank, good evening and welcome to CWS Journeys.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Um, I like how your bio starts with from the adventures in South America and the Caribbean to the sophistry of North America's second largest city. How do those close to you describe you, Frank? That what do they say about you when they describe you that you agree with?
Adventurous.
Uh huh.
Um, I seem to be a chameleon in some aspects. I've done in my 52 years, I've done a little of everything. So there are people who know me at different parts of my life, and those who have read the bio are discovering things that they never knew of me. So it kind of all depends on when you know me, and those who have known me all my life tend to say, okay, well, what next? What are you going to do next?
Hmm. Well, I hope one of the things I like to do on this show is twist the gem because I believe each of us is a gem with many facets. And as you rightfully said, people now reading your bio are discovering amazing things. I think we are multifaceted, and oftentimes people get a glimpse of one or two facets and they form an opinion. And so, what I like to do is to twist the gem and expose the various facets. So, born and raised in Guyana, Frank, when you think of Guyana, what comes to mind?
My hometown, it's a smile where it all started. Yeah, so it's a warm feeling. It's a warm, cozy,
Mhm.
um, you know, sense of nostalgia.
I'm going to take liberty with some pre.
It was about 14 or 15 years in between the two visits. The last visit? Oh, it was exciting. I went back with a group of 9 of us, and each had different reasons for going back, and so it wasn't just my return after 14 years. It was, I got to experience people of Guyanese parentage who had never set foot on the soil, and so it was a great experience to reintroduce myself and then to see the others marvel at places they've only heard about or to their parents and siblings. So it was a great experience, and to have the 50th Jubilee celebration as a backdrop was even more spectacular. Okay. Well, I went to St. Mary's School, and then on to Central High. So there would be common entrance, and all of those things that in a young adolescent life in Georgetown, and the seawall, and my dad was a seaman and my brother was a pilot. So between the two of them, I was able to see a lot of a lot of the country. Actually, I was privileged in that way, and food actually. Between that, that's probably where I started. Age 16, the CXC exams. It was the year that the Guyana government had introduced CXC, which was replacing the GCA exams, and we were the first batch of students to actually write that exam, the CXC exam. So we felt like guinea pigs in a way, and that would be my my most prominent memory of 16. Mhm. Um, as far back as I can remember, I think it's the thing that came most naturally to me. I wasn't someone that played sports, cricket or basketball or football or swimming. Um, Cooking seemed to be what I was gifted with in that sense. And so I gravitated towards it. And my mom never did it until later on, but she had periods of time that, she sold the stuff she made, but it was never really a profession. It was basically something she loved doing. And I think um, I adopted that attitude to it until later in life myself. And so I didn't really see myself as a professional. It was more of love for the art of cooking. And it was in New York that I actually, sat down and made the decision, to make it my primary source.
Mhm. Um, Somebody's saying that they're not hearing my questions or my sound. Um, just give me a second, Frank.
Okay.
All right, I think we're back on because I'm hearing it. So cooking, right? Your mom. You said she didn't do it professionally, and so on. Was she your greatest influence in the kitchen?
Yes, she was, and maybe to answer your question in a different way, but the earliest memory I recall was she had a Sunbeam mixer, and I couldn't be probably more than 4 or 5 years old, and I was mesmerized by the spinning beaters and the bowl. It had a white bowl that rotated as the mixers as the beaters spun, and for some reason it was magic to see the raw ingredients go in: the flour, butter, sugar, and the batter goes into the oven, and then out comes a cake. And, to me that was magical. And today I still bake cakes just because it's a if I'm doing nothing and I want to fill a void,
Uh-huh.
I will bake a cake, and that goes back to that memory.
I'm curious. When we were growing up, there was a favorite pastime called bush cooking.
Hmm.
Did you indulge in that?
Absolutely, yes. My cousins, Jacqueline, Pauline, and Gail, will can attest to that. We had many of the bush cooks in their backyard in Sobriety. Absolutely.
What was your favorite thing to cook, Frank, back then?
Um, as in the bush cook, or just in general?
No, well, okay. Let's take both. Bush cook, one, and more importantly, as you watch your mom around the kitchen and you learn from her pastries and different kinds of dishes and so on. What was your favorite thing to cook?
Well, the bush cook was anything that we could grab from the kitchen.
Right.
Grab. So it wasn't really a particular dish. It was out of whatever was available, and it'd be something resembling a cook-up rice or rice and peas or something like that. It was a one-pot something, that maybe have some kind of unmentionables in it, but to us it was delicious, and the fact that we got it done. In terms of a cake is still my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
In terms of baking, cheese straws, patties, and mom also started a tradition where each of us on our birthdays got to eat whatever it is that we liked, like our favorite dish. And mine was crab and callaloo soup.
Crab and callaloo soup.
Yeah.
Do you still make it today?
I do, yes.
Mm-hmm. So, Frank, tell us a little bit about mom. You mentioned her and her passion for cooking and being in the kitchen and so on. What was it like? What's your favorite memory of her when you were a child?
Well, she was always in the kitchen. So the memory would be her, making something delicious. And she also did some volunteer work for the YMCA, where she manned the cake stall at their fundraising fairs in Thomas Lands. And I also remember assisting her, to the fair and go to the stall and set up, and they sell the cakes and stuff. So it would always be, or someone running up and say, "Well, Lynette, could you make me some cheese straws or fudge or something like that?" And to see her execute that.
Do you recall any special words of wisdom from either your parents that still resonate with you today?
Right out of the top of my head, my grandmother always said, "Too much of anything is good for nothing." That resonates.
Uh-huh. Why is that? How do you apply that to the kitchen? I would say
Moderation.
mm. Your mom, you admired her as a cook growing up. Are you the last child, Frank?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So you admire her as a cook growing up. Was there ever a desire for her compliment or her complimenting one of your dishes?
Was there ever a desire?
Yes, for her to compliment you for one of your dishes. And what's the best compliment you've ever had?
Oh, well, there was a role reversal because obviously she was my mentor and teacher, the first one. And after I went through culinary school, whenever we were in the kitchen together, then she would ask me for advice.
Wow. What was that?
First time, I'm like, "Well, wait a minute, you've been doing this longer than me." But or the other funny thing is that now, if I'm at home and there's food on the table, or someone comes in and there's food, they assume that I cooked it, and I may not have, and I will get the praise, and then she will curse them out, saying, "Well, he didn't cook a damn thing." It was so it's but yes, she definitely, we have equal admiration for each other.
Mhm. Tell us a little bit about your decision to go to culinary school. You learn from mom, you're good, people know you're good, your food tastes good, your dishes taste good, yet you decide to go back to school and learn the fine arts of Culinary. What? Tell us a little bit about that decision. How did that come about?
Well, I'd have to take a couple steps back and go back to Pegasus in
Well,
Georgetown.
all right, Frank.
Well, because it's a long chain that, and, and somewhat disjointed in some parts. Because after I left high school, the first job I had was at the Pegasus Hotel as an assistant chef and or a prep chef, as they would call it, I think back then. And I worked in the breakfast area off the pool side, and then I started to trade after that. Then I came to New York and I looked for a job in the kitchen, but I didn't have any experience in New York, and I ended up in the hotel industry.
Mm.
And in the early 2000s, I realized that I had a wealth of experience, as a hotel manager, throughout the hotel industry in New York City. I still enjoyed cooking, and I did it on the side. And the one thing I wanted to do was to be formally trained, and I decided that as I approached my mid 30s that was the time to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I had actually a friend, and someone who I actually cooked for at that time for parties, and his name is Jason Bartlett, and he lives in Connecticut. And he said to me, well, if you went to school and become formally trained, he would go into business with me and open a restaurant. And that's how that came about. And I took him up on the challenge, and a year later, I was graduating from the Connecticut Culinary Institute.
You mentioned Pegasus. I want to jump back there for a little bit. Tell us about that days and what it was like cooking for some of the famous artists that have passed through Pegasus or have stayed there.
Well, like I said, I was on the breakfast line. I actually, made the breakfast and then served on the pool side. It was an exciting time as a young person just out of high school. And Pegasus then and now, has a reputation of being one of the most prestigious hotels there. And, we had a slew of famous people go through. Yellow Man and Fathead, if people remember who they are. I think that was they were the first two, prominent people I remember, cooking for. Mm-hmm. And it was a blast. It was a blast. I actually totally enjoyed it.
Yeah. What was one of your most defining moments at the Pegasus? What is one thing that stands out for you?
Paul Keen's Douglas.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know who he was. And he had a T-shirt that he was actually playing at the Cultural Center. And he had a T-shirt with his face on it. And I was serving him on the buffet line and looked up and saw the image on the shirt. And I didn't look all the way up to his face. And I said, oh, Paul Keen's Douglas. He said, he's playing. And I was telling him that, he's playing the thing. And he said, oh, really? What do you think of him? I said, oh, he's all right. And then I looked up and realized it was him. But, we had a good laugh about it. He wasn't offended because I didn't say anything bad to him, but, I was kind of like, he's all right.
No, since we are back in that era, Frank, and I'm curious about this aspect of Frank. Frank the trader, right? Traveling to countries like Brazil, Suriname, Trinidad, and so on. How and why did you become a trader?
I was making $89 a week at the hotel as a chef, as a cook basically, and Neville Waldron, who was a waiter at the time, started to trade. Basically, he was starting to go to Suriname, and he said I should join him, and I'm like, I don't know about it. It seemed I've never done anything like that, and I had a steady job with a paycheck, and it seemed kind of risky to me to because basically you had to sneak the stuff in, and and police would stop you, and all the things that made it treacherous. It didn't seem to work, to be worth throwing your money away in my sense. And he took my $89, went away over 2 days, and came back and tripled it.
Mm.
And and that convinced me that, wow, this could be a very profitable venture. And so I left the hotel and started to go to Brazil with Neville.
Give us one thrilling experience you had going to Brazil. Apart from the monkey stew experience, but
oh my gosh, there's so many to pick one. We went, initially we started going to Bovista, and then we started going further afield to Manaus. And the trail between Manaus and Bovista was particularly in the rainy season very treacherous, and oftentimes the buses would break down. And one night we blew a tire, and in the middle of a rainstorm, and the bus couldn't go anywhere. There was no way they could fix it, so we had to wait until the next morning. And so we all just went to sleep. And someone woke up and just said, "Oh my God!" And when we each woke up and looked out, the bus when it ran off the road, it went to an embankment, and we had stopped maybe 3 feet from a precipice. If we had continued, basically the mud had accumulated onto the front wheel and stopped the bus from going any further. But had it gone maybe another half a length of the bus, we would have just simply sailed off this cliff to maybe a 200 or 300-foot drop into a ravine. And the sense of, well, God must have been looking over us, and then we gingerly had to exit the bus because you didn't want to dislodge it and have it roll down the thing anyway. So that's. This
was on your way back with heavy loads, or?
No, this is on the way to Manaus.
Oh, wow. And Suriname, what was that trip like?
Well, that's over water. It's over the and that wasn't particularly treacherous in that sense. But
right.
You came back through the quarantine and Berbice and along the East Coast, and you'd be stopped by police, and you had to bribe them to pass, with your stuff.
You know what we should have done, Frank? We should have given our listening audience, those who are not acquainted with the term, and even the younger Guyanese who might not be acquainted with the term, what is a trader? What was a trader back then?
Well, it's someone who was involved in import-export business of consumer goods, and I stress consumer
goods that were banned, right, or hard to come by.
Yeah, in a nutshell, back in that time, a lot of consumer items were deemed were banned.
How old were you at the time, Frank?
19.
19. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 18. Yeah. So a lot of the country didn't have the foreign currency to import a lot of basic consumer items, and a group of indigenous, of resourceful young Guyanese people started to do it ourselves. And so we went to neighboring countries and sourced, from cooking oil to bath soap to materials for the mining industry, for the gold and diamond you know, battels and different things they use to mine gold and diamonds, and so to bicycle bearings, bicycle tubes, flour, almost anything you could think of that was not produced in Guyana, we found a way to bring it in.
What do you miss most about that period?
um, discovering new things. I mean, it was really it was hard, grueling work. So I mean, there was a lot not to miss in a sense. Um, but with it, we got to see parts of, when I could say that I have been through the Amazon jungle many times, and and the the pictures I have in my head from that time is what I miss.
Mm-hmm.
If I take myself back to that time, a lot of it was scary. A lot of it is scarier looking back because as a young adult, you don't fully understand, you don't fully comprehend um, how dangerous it is because you think you're invisible. But
Well, Frank, can you describe what it was like the first time you supervised your own kitchen?
it was magical because it was right after culinary school at the tail end of the program, and I had the unique opportunity to actually. I'm hearing the music.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, I had the unique opportunity to actually do an internship in my own kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
and so we opened the week after I completed my culinary training, and so it was walking into the kitchen, the dishes in Connecticut, restaurant myself and Jason, and also doing my internship for the program, and it really was it was magical. It was finally being able to getting to a commercial kitchen, and not just any commercial kitchen, but mine, and it was really one of those moments that I treasure.